have a party today. I love it. And it's not even Friday. It
Is
feels like Friday to me, though.
it all right? I'm on the wine already. Not even Friday, but I'm already on the wine.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But remind me, what is today? I struggle.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Honestly. Honestly.
I
Okay.
know.
All right. 2 more days to go.
And
But
weather.
then I ask myself, 2 more days to go to what? Because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday doesn't change jack all. It's
It's,
all in my mind. It's
it
all
all
in my mind.
blends into each other, doesn't it?
Literally.
Doesn't matter what day of the week it is nowadays.
Yes. Yeah.
But my kids can't understand how excited I am about 8th of March.
Me
I'm
too.
like,
Same.
I'm like, I love you. I don't know. Do any other parents feel this way? Where
Yeah.
it's almost like you're reminding yourself, I love my kids. I really, really, really do. And then the but comes in, and you're like, okay, can I just put a full stop so I can say the next sentence? Please send them back
Go
to
to school.
school. Send them back to school. If I have to do one more lunch, which I probably have another 2, 3 to do. Honestly,
Oh
I
no.
when my kids are reminded of school lunches, they would appreciate mommy's efforts and mommy's talents.
I agree completely. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
They need to be back, don't they?
Honestly, honestly, I'm like, I will miss you more when you go back to school.
It's like I won't miss you.
I will. Bye. Have a
All
lovely
right.
day.
So are we ready to start? Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Thank
Hello.
you, everybody, for coming. Because we just have 1 hour only. We have to start now. And just say welcome to Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu. And she's here to speak.
Mos-Shogbamimu. Mos-Shogbamimu. I know this is what happens.
Mos-Shogbamimu.
This is why I say to my 3 daughters, you better check out that last name before you say I do. Okay?
Yes, definitely. That's
But yeah,
fine.
it's
Thank you.
Mos-Shogbamimu. Just read it phonetically.
Yes, thank you very much. So Dr. Shola is here to talk about her book. She's a lawyer, a founder of Women in Leadership publication, political and women's rights activist. She's a political and women's rights activist, taught intersectionality, feminism to female refugees and asylum seekers, scrutinizes the government policies from a gender and diversity inclusion perspectives, co-organizes women's marches and social campaigns. She's also a New York attorney and solicitor of England and Wales with broad expertise in the financial service industry, writer, public speaker, political commentator, featured in mainstream and online media. She founded the Women in Leadership publication as a platform to drive positive change on topical issues like the impact on women. This is Women's Month, globally through inspiring personal leadership journeys, establishing she laws to promote women and BME leadership in the legal profession through the universities and secondary schools. She's an academic, enthusiastic, and she holds an MBA, PhD, LLM, MA, and the list is endless. This is why I resist. Don't define my Black identities is her book, which is unapologetic about addressing issues on race and racism and white privilege. So today we are going to welcome Dr. Shola and start talking about her book in generally.
Thank you so much. But can I just quickly say that the list of stuff that Alice kindly read out, that's actually the boring stuff. What you want is the more exciting stuff about me, about how much I love food, how much I like to dance. I'm a mommy to 3 girls. They drive me nuts, but I really do love them. The butt comes in again. Yeah, there's so much more interesting stuff, right?
That's definitely true. But before we start, I have to make a disclaimer, Dr. Shola. I'm married to a white guy, so I've read your book very much, and he's listening right now, and he's very enthusiastic, and he's an activist, no wonder, but he's very, very much enthusiastic about this. So when we start, So let's start with this book, which is amazing. But before I start, I just wanted to talk about PS and yourself. Is it Marmite or is it something? Just to break the ice.
You mean Piers Morgan?
Yes.
Well, I don't eat Marmite, so I don't know what that tastes like. It's definitely not marmalade or butter. But yeah, we agree to disagree. Piers and I agree to disagree on a number of issues. I think that is a way to definitely put it. And we
Okay.
don't hesitate to give each other our opinions, so to speak.
Okay. Oh, that's great then. So can you explain your book? I read it myself and as you can see, I've got lots of notes here and I don't think 1 hour is enough to explain anything. But I'm more or less looking at the way that you've written it and consciously quoting things that have happened also historically and putting things that have happened with tweets and all these things together, but mostly emphasizing the white privilege and talking about racism. So can you give our audience a synopsis at the first, and then we can see where we go from there about what exactly is your book if somebody has to pick it up and say, I'm going to read and gain something.
Thank you so much, Alice. I think the best way to kind of capture what the book is about is to think about what triggers your activism. That is what This Is Why I Resist is about. And what I try to do with this book is I try to address this ongoing hard conversation we have about race, racism, and race inclusion. I disabuse readers of the notion that talking about these issues should be comfortable. Of course, it's not going to be comfortable. Racism is not comfortable. There are people living in degrees of discomfort because of racism. And a lot of what I would describe as false steps to achieve race inclusion is a problem. And that's because we've not agreed on identifying what racism is for us to now achieve that solution of total race inclusion. And what I try to do with this book is I tried to write a book that I would like to read, if that makes sense. And what I wanted to do was speak with my voice. So I'm not writing a book the way other people might write it. I'm speaking with my voice, my understanding. And it was while I was writing this book that I realized that I've actually internalized a lot of things. Now, you would think that somebody as outspoken as me, clearly she gets it all out of her system. No, this book taught me that I've internalized so much in my 40 plus years on God's earth that there were times I was writing a chapter, I had to take a step back, that I had to just go, okay, it's time to watch Netflix. It's time to feed my face. It's time to just do something different. And for me, the kind of conversations you will see in this book is to
Yeah.
try to break down the barriers on, of race and really make people understand what we're talking about here. And
Mm-hmm.
I know there are people that may agree or disagree. I deconstruct what racism is. It's a
Mm-hmm.
power construct. It's not simply, I don't like you because you're black. No, it's the fact that you don't like me because I'm black that gives you a certain power that can deny me an equal value of life and liberty. That is beyond not liking me because I'm black.
Yes.
And I wanted people to also understand the difference between racism and anti-blackness.
Mm-hmm.
Anti-blackness exists. I also wanted people to start thinking about the fact that the word racism is not a catch-all phrase for every expression of hate that is out there.
Yes.
People talk about, I have people who, trolls and the like, who go, well, you can't say that's not racism. What about, they give examples of genocides, white
Yes.
on white genocide. I'm like, that's not racism.
Mm-hmm.
Give it its own name.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to understand that there is only one race.
Yes.
It's the human race,
Yes.
okay? As far as I'm concerned. But
Mm.
clearly, somewhere in the ancestry, right, white nations decided to have this social construct called racism based on superiority of race. It's
Mm-hmm.
justification for slavery, the dehumanization, commoditization, marginalization, and misrepresentation of Black people. Or else, how else could they get away with what they were doing?
Yes.
Capitalizing, profiting over Black lives, Black sacrifices, Black blood. People.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I try to do with the book is let's break this down. Then let's also understand how this power construct called racism is backed up by economic power and
Yes.
political power that is unparalleled.
Mm.
It exists between white nations and black and brown, excuse me. It exists between white nations and black and brown nations, and
Mm.
also exists between white and black and brown people. There's a reason for this. And this is
So,
why, as you go through the book,
yeah.
chapter by chapter,
Mm-hmm.
I pull out the kind of things people talk about. So I've drawn conversations of online social media conversations. I've
Mm-hmm.
drawn from headlines, mainstream headlines, right?
Yes.
Because if you don't recognize the language, the words, the acts that you're seeing, how are you going to understand what racism looks like? Because you
Mm-hmm.
see, it's not about what is racism, it's about how racism manifests in people's understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's a part of my book that I talk about racial gatekeepers.
Yes.
The token black, Asian, or ethnic minority that will sell their people under the bus. Why?
Mm-hmm.
It is important to talk about them because you cannot talk about the dehumanization of black people without talking about the black people that help and enable that dehumanization. Of course,
Definitely.
there'll be people who go, but Shola, hold up a second. What are you trying to say? Are you saying black people are monolith or single thought? No. After
Mm.
all, my husband doesn't agree with 50% of what I say, and I've not divorced him. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that people who use their power, their influence,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be anybody from a work employee to a politician, who
Yes.
use their power and influence and their words and their actions, their conduct to legitimize the
Mm-hmm.
dehumanization of black people and ethnic minorities
Mm-hmm.
are racial gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm.
part of the problem, not the solution.
Yeah.
And the book then ends on what I think is the most powerful question we need to ask today.
Mm.
When will white people progress? White people, let us talk true. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let
Mm-hmm.
us talk true. This is not about those white people that get it and who are actively anti-racist. And I do point out in my book that we have had white brothers and sisters who have fought the good fight for racial
Mm.
justice and racial equality. Some of them even losing their lives and liberty. But
Yes.
because they were the lone voices in a system predicated on denying black people an equal value of life and liberty, there
Mm.
was not enough force from their end to really drive the kind of massive change we need to see in our systems today. So my book ends on that point, and then I go through a lot
Yeah.
of things from white
Mm-hmm.
ingratitude. Yes,
Mm.
I said that.
Mm-hmm.
Weaponizing whiteness, what that
Mm.
looks like
Mm.
performative, to white performative allyship. All those
Mm.
who immediately put out black squares because hashtag black, Black Lives Matter is trending.
Definitely.
That
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
allyship.
Yeah.
So I talk about what allyship needs to look like. But you see,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to do with the book is I'm trying to have a conversation. I'm
Mm.
hoping to God people hear my voice as
Yeah.
they read the book. I'm hoping that they are having a conversation with me. It is
Mm.
okay to disagree. The point
Yes.
is, this is not about everybody saying, well, I do agree that this is the end of it. No. The point is, we can all agree that systemic racism is an issue because we must identify what systemic racism is.
Mm-hmm.
That is, but that's not where we are. That's the problem. The
Yeah.
people who are denying racism, they're denying how it systemically works,
Mm.
wasting our time. These people are still at the 1, 2, 3s, do re mi's, ABC of racism,
Yes.
wasting our energy and time in trying to have a conversation with them, wanting us to persuade them, wanting us to unpick their learning. And I'm saying, I don't have time for that. I need
Yeah.
you to educate yourself. Once you've
Mm.
educated yourself, I would then come have a conversation with me.
Mm.
And you see, we may then disagree on how we get to the solution. But
Yes.
if we've identified what the problem is, we're on the same page.
Mm. Mm.
Right? I mean, think
Yeah.
about it. Even the
Definitely.
feminist movement, um,
Mm.
we are all on the same page about women's rights, but we
Yes.
may all have different ideas as to how we get there. But at
Definitely.
least we're on the same page. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what this book is trying to do is speak to those who are denying systemic racism, speaking to those who are willfully ignorant of it, speaking to those who have questions and cobwebs in their heads and thinking, well, I would like to know more, speaking to those who are of like minds who want to fight it. Because there's a part in my book where I say, for instance, when I talk about racial microaggressions,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
give examples like when you
Mm-hmm.
come across this is what
Mm.
you mean, and this is what you can say. People, let us be bold. And it's not just Black people that can respond to racial microaggressions. I say to my white siblings, if you hear a Black or ethnic minority experience a racial microaggression, my book can tell you how to speak on their behalf, to step in that gap. Because your white privilege, whether you like it or not, gives you an authority because of the color of your skin. And the reason you have that privilege is from that legacy of slavery, is as a product of systemic racism. But it is also because we live in a society, in a world that caters to white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied Christian. That is the reality. So in all of these groups, they each have privilege. And if you use your privilege to say, well, hold up a second, somebody will need to take note simply because you're white. Can you believe that? Just because
definitely,
you're white.
definitely.
So use that to kick some ass.
Yeah, I was so intrigued because I think I've faced it quite a lot here about when you state about Black people angry. Many people have called you angry Black woman. I've heard that several times myself. Deviant, immoral, stupid, no matter how much learned you are or you are not learned or whatever. There's all these stereotypes that come with Black people. And these are the ones that are manifesting even in universities, in institutes, in everywhere. So in your book, you explain that. Can you tell the audience how then should we, young people are here with you, they hear your story, they want to know how they can carry themselves in these societies.
Okay, so the key thing for me, and I covered this in a chapter titled, Can I Be Me?
Yes.
People, can Shola be Shola? That's all I'm saying. Is it okay for me to open this God-given mouth, speak my truth, and not be judged negatively for it? Is it okay for me to have my desires, my dreams, my ambitions not curtailed, not shaped by negative stereotypes that come from a time that I have jack all to do with? Can I be me? And I think that is many a Black woman saying the same thing. So you can all see the way I'm talking right now, right?
Yeah.
You know, the Nigerian in me always comes out. My body is a whole language of expression in itself. My hands are moving. Everything's moving all at the same time. Now, for some people, they may see that to be threatening. They may see that to be, oh, she's not very calm. But I am calm. I'm good. I mean, you can ask my husband and children what I look like, angry. But the point is, this is how I talk. This is how I converse. This is me. For many of us, using these negative stereotypes are used to silence us. So the angry Black woman stereotype is
definitely
for Black women who are strong-willed, who have, their own authenticity, and is speaking from that. The strong Black woman stereotype is used to, and I try to explain this in the book.
Yeah, you do.
I find it really funny. Apparently, we are so strong that some people feel the way to deal with our strength is to attack us, is to apply those negative stereotypes, to continue to hit at us. And then when we respond, we are called the angry Black woman. We're called bullies. We're called dominant. We're called domineering. We can't win for losing. We can't speak out against the attack. And we tend to internalize the pain because apparently that's why we are strong. But that strong Black woman stereotype is being used to oppress. It's not a compliment. It's not a compliment. That's why I try to explain the book. We cry too. We've got blood flowing in our veins.
Definitely.
The fact that we pick ourselves up and we keep going doesn't mean that we tolerate or we are happy with certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Keep pushing. So when I talk about that in that chapter, I'm talking about how the authenticity of Black women are continually dehumanized by these negative stereotypes. And then I try to give contemporary and historical facts to show how this happens. Every single time. If you look at even women of biracial Black heritage, it doesn't matter how light-skinned you are, how lighter skinned you are from your dark-skinned Black sisters. The moment it is well known that you are of Black heritage, it's just attached to you. I mean,
Yeah.
I was doing an interview earlier today about the Meghan Markle whole story.
Mhm.
And I was speaking with the royal correspondent who said, well, Shola, anybody can be a bully. Bully has no color. I said, let me stop you right there. It
Mm.
is true that anyone can be a bully to the other, but bully has color, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Even before I've opened my mouth, and when I do open my mouth,
Mm.
that word bully can be attached to me for no good reason, out
Mm.
of the irrational fear that some people may have about the power of my authenticity, the
Yeah.
power of my opinion, and my
Definitely.
power of expression.
Mm. Mm.
I cannot help but be me.
That's true. But then you also mentioned, unconscious bias has
Mm.
been dished out like hotcakes recently. People are making money. Trainings are going from left to right, from academics to whatever, to councils and everywhere. Everybody should do. And you write here that this unconscious bias doesn't work. Can you explain to people that are listening why you are saying so?
Okay, to my brothers and sisters online and non-binary siblings as well. In Shola's humble opinion, it's my humble opinion. I do not believe that there's any such thing as unconscious bias.
Mhm.
There's bias, and that bias, by all means, might be subconscious, but
Mhm.
it's only waiting for the right circumstances to trigger it.
Mhm.
It is not unconscious. Do you hear of unconscious murder, unconscious
Yeah.
manslaughter? Hmm?
Yeah.
People are busy giving themselves excuses.
Mm.
Discrimination, racism, all kinds of things are happening in the workplace. And rather than dealing with it for what it is, people go, it's unconscious bias, let's go for training. And then you send them for training, and the same people walk out the same way they walked in. They've not been trained on anything. If you're
Yeah.
not uncomfortable, by the time you come out of a bias training, you've learned jack all. And what I'm trying to explain to people is that, especially as you're older, it is
Mhm.
your responsibility to understand what your bias is, not
Mm.
somebody else's job to unpick it for you.
Yeah.
You need to start asking yourself questions. When
Yeah.
when you hear about something and your first response or first thought creates a conflict, ask yourself, why did I think that way? Why was that my first thought?
Mm.
If you don't start with your own self-assessment, all you're going to do in the world is exude your ignorance
Mm.
and cause pain, not just for the people that you're directing it at, but for yourself, because
Mm.
hopefully one day you will see the light. So, as far
Mm.
as I'm concerned, bias is conscious, maybe somewhere in our subconscious, but waiting for the right circumstances to trigger it. Racial bias is a big issue. Racial prejudice is a big issue. All of these things we need to understand, and even
Mm.
bias, the kind of bias on it could just be small nuances. I'll give you guys an example. I
Yeah.
remember over 20 years ago, when we moved from civil partnership to marriage, is same-sex marriage. Now, I'm all pro LGBTQI. I'm like, great. When the civil partnership came, I was like, yes, because I thought it was really wrong. Now I was much, much younger. Okay. But then when the same partnership, I remember, I think I heard it on the news or God knows where. I remember my first thought was, but is that marriage? And immediately I remember saying to myself, but why did I think that? Why isn't
Mm.
it marriage? Because I noted immediately that there was a conflict. Because I'm
Mm.
thinking, but I have no issue with the LGBTQI community. I have no issue about, but why am I questioning whether that's marriage? And I did not have the words that I have today. Today we've
Mm.
got labels, we've got all kinds of things that explains different things. I didn't have that over 20 years ago. But by asking myself that question over 20 years ago, I understood. I began to understand why that question popped in my mind.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
because of the way I have been brought up on what marriage is. It's
Mm.
because of what society has taught me what marriage is. It's because
Mm.
of what religion has taught me what marriage is. And then it became my job to unlock my own learning, to undo it. Do you understand? Because the moment
Definitely.
I identify
Def-
what that conflict was, because I
Definitely.
don't have an issue, but is this marriage or something? But why am I asking myself that?
Yeah.
But that is where we all need to get to. Well,
Mm.
but Alice, I find that when it comes to the issue of racism, race inclusion, people expect us to have a cup of tea, a nice cuppa, where people like me and you will be feeding others bite-sized chunks like they're feeding them pieces of cake and go, are you comfortable? Are you ready for the next lesson?
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. When God was dishing out patience, I wasn't in that queue. I was probably feeding my God knows what.
The sisters out there might say we are exhausted. I am
beyond
personally
exhausted.
exhausted. I'm a refugee background, and one of the things that I'm dealing with at this moment is refugees all over the world. They're being ostracized and everything. Women, mostly Black women, are exhausted about this. So how do we move on from this exhaustion that we feel now and move in and help also refugee communities are being ostracized, critical race theory, you write about all these things. How much can we go on? How much are the younger generation going to stand up again and again from generation to generation?
I think your question feeds back into how much, your own individual capacity. Okay, because I remember somebody asking me, well, how do you keep on doing this? How do you manage? How do you pick what battles? Things like that. The exhaustion is normal, and I need people to understand that.
Yeah.
But please remember those who have gone before us, the shoulders that we stand on. They didn't fight the good fight for us to feel exhausted and do nothing. They didn't sacrifice their lives, their liberty for us to sit and go, well, I'm tired. You don't have the luxury to be tired. In this active anti-racist action, you do not have that luxury, because if you don't do something, it's going to affect your loved ones. Okay, so whether you're black, brown, or white, and I explain in the book that racism is a white problem.
Yes,
it's a black people problem. This isn't it. Kumbaya, my Lord. No. Or we shall overcome. Please. That was before my time. This is a time for progress. It's time for action. And that is why when you get tired, recognize when you're feeling exhausted.
Yeah.
Something different. I don't know, watch Netflix. Do what I do. I don't feed your face. Do something, but you need to come back. Yeah. Remember that with everything in life, there are ups and downs.
Yeah.
And you need to know where your own level of capacity is. But don't allow yourself to get run down. In 2020, with the pandemic and lockdown, that was the first time I realized in my life that I don't know how to do self-care. In fact, that was the first time the word self-care really came into my thinking.
Into your mind, yeah.
Right. And it is important for us to lend a hand to each other. Look, I get a lot of negative trolling and the like. It's almost like they're looking for you. They go on my YouTube channel, they try to send me emails, try to send me DM. And in the midst of all of this noise, right, from the negative naysayers, I could just receive one message from a total stranger saying, we love your work. And that just brightens everything up. Think about that. I wasn't looking for it. That person didn't even know that their words would mean so much. That's one voice.
Yeah.
And say, I don't know, 20 other voices that were negative. And you also have to always, I think in this fight, this anti-racist activism, it is so important for you to be grounded in yourself. People, don't let anybody else define you. Because as I explain in my book, if you let other people define you, you will morph into that identity. My faith, I'm a Christian, and my faith is my solid foundation.
Yeah.
So when I need to get back into remembering who I am, I step back into my faith, because nobody can take that from me. I tend to use this example. I remember the first time I saw this message on my YouTube channel that called me an ugly monkey, telling me to go back where I came from, where I come from.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first time I'd seen something like that. And as my brain was, your brain is reading and sending the message to wherever your eyes are reading and your brain is then comprehending.
Yeah.
Just as that was happening, my faith spoke, reminding me in the same nanosecond that God has already said, Shola, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. I said, hey, oh my God, Shola, you're a beautiful, beautiful woman. That was my reaction to somebody telling me that I'm ugly.
Don't make Auntie Shola salvage, that's for true.
We all have to remember that when you're trying to do good work, there will always be those who want to stand in the way.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
To my white siblings, I'll say, remember that truth applies to you too. The moment you're stepping out of your comfort zone or what, especially if say those around you are predominantly those who tend to think the other way, you will get attacked. I mean,
Definitely.
I cannot. I don't know if some of you saw some of the um, uh, uh, videos on social media of white kids educating their white parents on racism.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could stand up, clap, hug them, I would. That's the
Yeah.
next generation.
Yeah.
They give me hope.
Mm. That's very true. And all these things, I know there's a lot of questions that are burning behind, and lots of people put them in the chat. There's going to be people that are bringing out the questions and asking you and wanting to know more about your amazing book. I could have asked a lot of questions, but I just want other people to come in and
Please.
put your questions there. If you want to unmute yourself when you're picked up, Kelly is going to help me with the questions, I think, and Emily, so that we just have people asking those burning questions. Some of them have been waiting all this time to ask about those important. And we also have people here, allies, that really want to know more what they can do and these stereotypes that are happening. So if there's a question, Emily, that's coming up, could we bring it up so that we ask Shola how we can navigate this racism that has come up?
Got a
Or
question
people want
from
to put up their
Harriet.
hands, right? Mhm.
Oh, go on. Harriet, do you want to speak?
I asked 3 questions though, so you might want to be more specific.
Pick
Then there's
whichever one
maybe
you most want to ask.
Okay, I'll go for the feminism one then. So you absolutely love the book, and I was the one who tweeted you at 3:30 in the morning saying I've just finished. So in the book you kind of talk about men getting involved in the feminism campaign, but you don't really want men to be the dominant force in the feminism campaign because a lot of voice still needs to be left to the women. But you're also kind of very clear that racism is a white person problem, and that therefore they need to be leading the discussions. And what my concern is how do you do that in a way without a white ally taking the voice of a black person who should be really kind of giving their point of view?
That's a great question. So, yes, I talk about the fact that the word feminist is gender neutral. My father is the first feminist that I know. What I explain in the book is that some in the feminist movement don't want men involved because they're worried that men will take over the spaces. So I'm not worried about that. Those feminist men that I've come across understand how there needs to be a balance and that their support should be there. You are absolutely right to ask the question, well, how do we then ensure that white allies aren't taking spaces? You know, I want an ideal world where everybody knows, and this is what I'll say to my white siblings, your space in the anti-racist activism movement is there. It's your space. It's for you to step into it. But if you are cognizant about bias, about what others have done in abusing their space, then you will be more careful. You may make mistakes along the way. That's natural. That's normal. You know, we all make mistakes and we learn from them. This is why I say that in the movement we have to have a safe place where when somebody makes a mistake, we go, okay, actually, this is what you did, and then people can pick themselves up. Not a problem. The truth about the matter is, it's about listening. So to my white allies, it's about listening. It's about learning, and then using what you've learned in action.
Yeah.
And that means using your space, your voice, your influence in a way that you know best. And if you are then corrected, because what if, for instance, what if, for instance, you do something that people go, oh, you're taking space. You just learn to understand why and what that is. But you don't step away, right? You just understand why and what that is.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Harriet? Because it's important to I don't want white siblings thinking, well, because I am concerned about causing offense, it's better that I'm silent. That is a problem. Better to learn if you make a mistake than not to make a mistake at all and not be part of the solution. And that is where engaging more with those who are actively anti-racist. And remember, I may have mentioned this book, but I talk about it a lot. Being actively anti-racist is not the reserve of the street. It's your dining room, it's your family, it's the high street, it's your boardroom, it's your schools. It's you using the opportunity anytime you learn something that you go and you see something wrong, you speak up.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster, Harriet, right? And I know being white female, you'd have seen the stuff that I talked about especially with white feminism.
Yeah.
And I try to draw out some of the problems there. I worked with some incredible white feminist sisters who they're just on top. They just get it. I've also had the fortune of working with some white feminists who bring racism and racial prejudice, racial bias into the feminist movement, who feel threatened by our Afro-visible feminism, who talk like this. Well, we just wanted to make sure that we create spaces for Black women and ethnic minorities. I'm like, girl, you can't create a space for me. That space was always mine. So you can step aside.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, definitely. You do talk about feminism in so much detail and explain everything that happens in it. And also adding on to that, you also talk about decolonizing. Most of the things that people are trying to do is about decolonizing all the things that we were taught in everything. Let's find out another person who's got a question. Emily, do you have somebody?
Just to that point about decolonizing, when people talk about that, we tend to think about maybe the educational curriculum. But in my book, as Harriet would have also seen, I use everyday examples of white supremacy. I even using things like plaster. Imagine I was 2 years old when I realized that plaster can come in other colors aside from pink and beige. Then, oh my God, you mean I can get plaster my color? Like that. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's true. I think any other questions, Emily, that you have?
Yeah, I think Eloise has a question.
Yeah, I do. My family were affected by a example of racism, which I think a lot of people don't really know that much about, even not so much even at the time. It was when the Nazis invaded Poland. They had an opinion of Polish people that they were of a different race, and the way that they decided who was of that race and who wasn't was a similar way to what they did with the Jewish people, where they measured faces. So my grandfather was very lucky and he managed to escape from a concentration camp and fled to Britain. But of course, he was very physically and mentally scarred for life. But I remember as a little girl sitting in his living room and him telling us about how, they measured our family's faces, and that was the reason as to whether people got to live or die. And like some of our close family were sterilized forcibly because they were considered to be vermin and to be eradicated. And I mean, we have white skin, so I was just wondering what your opinion of that kind of racism is.
I'm really sorry, first of all, that your family experienced that. That expression of hate and that atrocity is exactly what we're fighting today, to make sure we never repeat what humanity has done before. Now, what I do in my book is to explain that racism isn't, when you read my book about how I define what racism is, I'm not defining racism by I just think it is. I'm defining it by what we know it is in terms of the facts. White on white genocide, I don't define as racism. I think that expression of hate has its own name. That hate has its own, that atrocity has its own name, but it's not based on superiority of skin. It's not that is not how it works. So if you just again, I think when you have the opportunity to read my book, what I try to do is explain how this works, but it doesn't take away from the atrocity that was committed. Because bear in mind that in other continents, like in Africa, in Asia, same was done by black on black, by Asian on Asian. That's not racism. It has its own name. That genocide, that atrocity has its own name. Either way, this is what I'll say, Eloise, I would use the same level of resistance, of advocacy, the same energy to fight that hate that your family experienced as I would racism. Either way, as far as I'm concerned, none of it is acceptable.
Definitely. There's also something interesting when we come into that, because you brought in something which I haven't seen anywhere, which you'd write about. White knee is power versus black neck. White knee is power versus black neck.
Because
I was so intrigued about that. Can you explain it for somebody who is listening?
So what I tried to do in, I think that's chapter 4, where I posed the question, can we breathe, please?
Yes.
When George Floyd died with the words, I can't breathe.
Yes.
You know, that resonated powerfully, okay? But I think amongst the Black communities, it resonated powerfully for different reasons. The reason why it resonates is because we literally can't breathe in plain sight.
Yes.
Politically, socially, economically, the way the discrimination, racial discrimination works to deprive Black people an equal value of life and liberty, we can't breathe in plain sight. That is what I try to use to explain what this looks like and how this ongoing dehumanization is done so plainly that what we then do in 2021 is we try to okay it. Think about it. People go, well, you know, that's okay. It's not as bad as that. No. They're all bad.
Yeah.
You get comments like, well, you know, Britain is the least racist country. Well, if it's least racist, it means it's racist, people. That's what it means.
Definitely. Okay.
And even in our politics, it is a problem. So when you think about how that works and how that can shape opportunities, outcomes, social mobility, all of that, what I try to do is I give facts in the book.
Definitely.
In fact, one of the reasons I wrote the book is so that when people ask me for examples, I say, go and read the book, please. Don't waste my time. Don't waste my brain cells. I'm tired.
That's true. I'll bring in Lisa. Lisa, you've got a question. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yep. Hi, Shola. Thanks so much for being here. And I love your book. My question is really, and I see this kind of play out in the work I do on women's homelessness, actually. And I think there's a kind of a similarity here in this resistance, actually, to recognizing the reality of racism and the defensiveness that we see from people in terms of the role, recognizing the role of white privilege, and that they actively avoid hearing it, they avoid and actively deny that it exists. And I see this as well with in terms of gender inequality and violence against women and girls. And I wonder how you what do you say to people like that who just resist that racism is a reality and are really defensive in the role of white privilege? How do you kind of respond to those people?
I think you may have seen how I respond to them.
Yes, I have.
On TV and the like, or even in articles that I write. Yeah. If I'm perfectly honest with you, I think we're all made very differently. And I've come to recognize that I really don't have tolerance for any enabling of racism, of white supremacy. So for those who still want to be arguing about whether or not racism exists or denying how bad it is, as far as I'm concerned, they are at the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, do, re, mi's of racism. I am at the Pythagoras theorem level, okay? Because there's a real fight going on and I need to reserve my energy. If I waste my energy on them, I'll be too tired by the time I get to the front line. So I'm going to focus on the front line. However, we are all of us anti-racist activists, black, white, brown. We are all parts of one body. So even if I am not necessarily wholly focused on those who are still at that beginners level, there are people who are more than happy to have that conversation with them. I'm not saying that conversation is not necessary. I'm just saying that I understand my capacity.
Yeah.
You know, I was saying that earlier. I understand my capacity, and there are things that I get called to come speak on TV and I say no. I'm like, that's not worth my time. But there's some things I say yes to, because I'm thinking we need to disabuse people of that, and I'm more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
So to those who are deliberately still being willfully ignorant about racism, maybe it's not me that can persuade them. By all means, they can read my book, please. You can give them my book, right?
Definitely.
And they can argue with me, because with my book, I think that there will be things you agree with. There are things that you might not agree with. There are things that you may even laugh at. There are going to be things that might shock you and might emotionally drain you because of, you know, the reality of the ugliness of systemic racism. But you can have a conversation in my book, right? And there are other people who have written books too. There are documentaries that are allowed. The point is, people at this stage of our lives, we cannot continue to cater to those who don't want to learn. It is not, I mean, as a parent, for instance, there comes a time with your child where you just speak very sternly, get up. You love your child, you want to hug your child, like, get up. I don't feel like, you better get your butt up right now. It's time to go. Let's move. And sometimes we need to have those conversations. What I do say is, have safe conversations. If anyone on this call is one of those who feels, well, I don't really agree, but or I have cobwebs and in my head about certain issues, but I don't want to go say something and people judge me wrongly. What I say to them is, have conversations you feel with people you feel you're safe with, people who know you, your black or brown friends. I mean, be wary of the racial gatekeepers, but your black or brown friends. Have real conversations with them, argue with them, disagree, agree, but you know they're not going to hate you because they know you. And we all need to have people like that. My husband is such. As I said, he doesn't agree with 50% of what I say. I mean, not on this issue of racism, clearly, but or maybe other issues, politics, blah, 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 right? And as I say, I've not divorced him yet. Did I say yet? I haven't divorced him over that. But there are people you can have safe conversations with, people who are in your life, who you can ask questions. I ask questions of people that I feel safe with because I don't understand something, I want to understand it. But what I know that I'm not going to do, and I choose not to do, is spend my energy continually with those in that space, because I know what it can do to me. I do not want to be drained. Maybe I might do one or two, but I can't spend my time there. This is why I resist. This is why I wrote the book.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I've got somebody, Monica, has got a question. Can you unmute yourself, please, Monica, if she's still there?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know your book. I'm finding out. That's why I'm here, and I'm going to buy it. But I just wondered if you had any tips about things to avoid in it's both black-white interaction, but it's also English foreigner interaction, because I'm speaking because I have some experience of it, which is this, you meet somebody and then instead of having the conversation about something interesting that was the reason for the contact, that somehow it goes into, where are you from?
Oh.
And I lived in this country as a child for many years, but suddenly in my 60s, I get asked, where are you from? All the time. And then I have to go, the whole thing deviates. And I feel like saying, don't ask. Everybody's from somewhere, you know, and there's all the history attached, and that wasn't the point right now. So are there some sort of no-nos that you would say, like for white people not to
Okay, so
avoid?
this is what I would say. It's interesting that I actually address the book at this point in the book, and I give examples as well. One of which is where are you really from? But I think, Monica, that you answer the question when you said, "I feel like saying don't ask." That's what you should say.
I
Don't
feel
ask.
like what?
When you said,
Oh,
"I
don't
feel
ask.
like
Yes,
saying
yes,
don't
yes,
ask,"
yes. Yeah. I could say, oh,
Yeah,
don't ask.
definitely.
just say
Yeah.
don't ask.
Oh, you know, I
Okay,
hadn't actually
but
thought of that.
but
Yeah.
the thing
I
is,
feel obliged to explain, you know.
yeah, but the thing is, it's one thing to ask where you're from, which sometimes can be innocent enough. It is the next question that gets me. It's when they go, "Where are you really from?" That's the one.
Really from, yes, that's
Yeah.
right, because I
That
say
is
I'm
one that
Indian.
gets me because it means that what I said to you in the first instance didn't satisfy you.
Yeah.
You really
Yeah.
want to put me in a box. So when I say to
Yeah.
people, "Oh yeah, I'm from London, British," they're like, "Yeah, but where are you really from?" Because
Really. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, where are you really from?" And especially with, of course, you get this question, especially from Black and ethnic minorities. We get a lot of these questions from white people. And when you then reverse that question to them and they go, "But I'm English." I'm sorry, what makes you English? Because you're white? Where did your people come from? Were they Viking? Did they come from over the sea? Where did you're like, where did they really come from? Or
Definitely.
imagine asking
Yeah.
white Australians,
Yes, Viking, yeah.
from?
Yeah.
"Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm Australian." And you're like, "Well, hold up a second, but if I remember correctly, nah, you came here from somewhere else, or your ancestors came here from somewhere else." Anytime you think of reversing the question, all of a sudden, white people feel really uncomfortable. In fact, it cracks me the heck up when I hear some white people go, "It's really, really uncomfortable when you say white people." I'm like, so all your life that you've been saying black people, that wasn't uncomfortable. But because you
Definitely.
refer to as white people, that's an issue. Please
Yeah.
sit down. Don't get me started. It's
Yeah.
really funny. Look,
Yeah.
every single one of us on this call was born into a social construct. This social construct of race. We didn't create it. You didn't, I didn't. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have thought that if anybody had any good sense, we
Yeah.
will learn from history and go, okay, we need to just stop all this nonsense about race, yada yada. We need to adopt a whole different language, right? But because there are systems that continually benefit from the social construct of race, that is why we are where we are. I mean, I often use politics as an example. Sometimes I say to people, "All right, you're actively anti-racist activist, wonderful. How in heaven's name do you vote someone like Boris Johnson into office? How in heaven's name do you vote someone like Donald Trump into office? Because your politics reflects who you are." "Well, I don't really think that Boris is a racist." "Oh, really? All the evidence that are there, they are just written by nobody." When he wrote it and said it himself. "Oh,
Yeah.
but Trump is not really racist." But that's my point. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to start getting into politics because your politics.
Yeah.
The point is, we have to use every platform, and that's what my book talks about. Each one of us have power, influence, democratic power. We use our vote. If we elect officials into power who don't reflect our values, then I need you to question what exactly you're really passionate about. How do I vote in somebody who is actively anti-Semitic or homophobic? How do I justify that to myself? How do I justify that to my Jewish siblings or to my LGBTQI siblings? How, in heaven's name, do I justify that? So it's okay that they're not racist to Black people, but yeah, we can live with the LGBTQI. I can't live with it. It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
You can't just be thinking of the economy. You can't just be thinking of yourself. I need people to understand that in today's world,
Yeah.
no man is an island. Because you
Yeah.
see, your next help could be from your neighbor, your Black neighbor to your left, or your Asian neighbor to your right. But if you are actively or obliviously enabling the dehumanization of your neighbors, they will not be there to support you or help you when you need their help.
Definitely. I've got a quick question coming in from Nima before we, Hassan, before we wind down. Can you unmute yourself, please, and ask the question?
Hi, my name's Naima. I haven't actually read your book yet. It's been ordered. I know, I'm so sorry, but I follow you on Twitter and I have done for a while, and I really agree with everything you say. So I wanted to ask a question. It's a bit of a personal one. I've been working on a project recently with the local police in Reading, and it's all about EDI and trying to kind of improve the relationship between the Black community and Asian community and ethnic minorities overall and the police. But I think a lot of the problems stem from distrust, obviously, from reports saying the police are institutionally racist. And I also personally feel conflicted because the Black community are calling for the police to be abolished or for the police to be defunded overall. And I'm kind of trying to work with them to reform. So I just wanted to ask, do you think it's possible to actually reform the policing as we have it now? Or do you think we have to start again? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so first of all, well done, my dear. Brilliant work you're doing. And I know it's hard. I understand that. Look, the police, like every other civic function we have, including the government, is necessary. Okay, we live in a society where people do bad things, good things, whatever. We do need that. I am not for abolishing the police when we know that as a function we need them, but I'm most definitely for reforming them. And I think people have a misunderstanding of what defund the police means. Maybe it means different things to different people, but for me, defunding the police actually means looking at how the funding they get, not funding for critical things they need, but funding they get can possibly be channeled into developing better community and police relations. Do you see? That is the way I see it. So I'm not thinking, oh, we get rid of the police. I do think that the police must be held accountable for acts of racism, for acts of police brutality. In the absence of accountability, there's no unity. In the absence of accountability, there's no justice. Don't tell me to hold on. No, I don't want to hold on. I want to see justice done. And it is when people start to see that justice done that it will, the healing will start. There needs healing, but that healing comes when there's that justice. So if the police can be reformed with justice reform, with being held accountable, with even looking at how funding can go towards building community and police relations, I think that can go a long way to addressing a lot of the pain and the hurt that has happened over decades, close to centuries kind of thing. But the reality, as we know, is that the police as an institution in this country has been found to be institutionally racist. Okay? The office as an institution in this country has been found to be institutionally racist. It is not an institution that is necessarily racist. It is those who drive the institution, those who are behind the seat, those who, the policies that thrive in such institutions that make it racist. And it also means that for those who are good police, I feel for good police, because it means that their hard work is not being recognized. It also means that they're being silenced. If they want to speak out about something, they're being seen to betray to betray the force. No, I would think that your job as a police officer is to first of all protect and serve. Not each other, but us. And if somebody falls short of that, they're not worthy to wear the uniform or call themselves a police officer.
Oh, thank you so much. Looking at the time, there's so many questions here about refugees from Nikki. There's other questions, thought-provoking and all that, but because of time, as usual, we can't answer them. We know very much you work with refugees. But just to wind up, summarize. So what's your plan? What do people do? In this book, you quote a lot of Americans, more than British. I'll use my privilege as chair to close down. This is worrying for me. Going through the book, a lot of it comes from America. So many you quoted it, not the Twitter ones and all that. Why is that? In like my children, Taddy and Michelle always say, why is they look across the Atlantic for somebody? Why is that so? When there's a rich history here of Black people, why?
Thank you for that question. And I need people to understand the purpose of my book. My book is not a history book of anti-racist activists in Britain or in America. No, my book is looking at particular points. And the reason why you find certain sayings or quotes from very well-known American or even African people is because in some ways, these are people that people can easily identify with.
Yeah.
But I use names of Africans that people don't know either.
Yeah,
definitely. The point is, what they're saying, that quote I'm using is expressing the point that I'm trying to address. Okay. So my thing is not about who said it, it's about what they said. If my book was about, a history book, then by all means, your point, I find would be a valid one, because then it'd be, why didn't you talk about British people? But I do talk about British people. I talk about British experiences a lot in the book. But like I explained in the book, my book does focus solely on Britain and America.
Yeah.
That does not mean there are not other white nations like France and Belgium and Spain that have a long history of slavery. It's just that there are only so many words I can possibly cover, right? And I need people to be able to transfer what I've said in one, that, look, you will find this in France too. So that is why you see that. I'm focused on what was said rather than who said it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So your future, there you are, a member of parliament, looking at the number 10, getting on and challenging everything.
Do you think Parliament is ready for a voice like mine? I don't know about that. Look, it's where the good Lord sends me that I will be. My thing is to continue to use every avenue that I'm presented with by God's grace to be the best that I can be, to help drive change, whether that's socially, politically. And you don't have to be a politician to be involved in politics. And I'm definitely involved in politics, especially holding to account and questioning and being part of that whole process. But you know what, Alice? I say this to my kids. I tell them there's no full stop after your name, just loads of commas.
Definitely.
So there are loads of commas coming my way that I'm going to find out. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. So for everybody, thank you, Dr. Shola. And for everybody, this is why I resist. It's a must to get this book and read it. And it's actually not very difficult. There are some books when you pick up and you think, oh, I'm going to be Googling every word. It's an easy read, you can get it. And we continue with why we resist. And I'm so happy, and I'm so happy to have been honored to be here. The Fabian Women's Society is there for those that want to know more about it. There are amazing things the women do also on the Fabian Women's Society. So thanks everybody for coming, and big hand to Dr. Shola for all the insight into these great conversations that keep on going. Thank you very much. You take care.
Thank you so much for having me. And
thank you.
Thank you so much.
People have read my book, and like I said, some even got to laugh. So that's something you can look forward to. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Picked up the phone to ring the bookshop.
Yeah,
I'm going to ring the bookshop.
Yes.
It's a bit late.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.